Taking Care of Yourself and Your Family.
A resource book for good mental health.
By John Ashfield.
Supported by Beyond Blue, the National Depression Initiative.
This sound recording has been produced by Vision Australia in 2010 on behalf of Beyond Blue in the interests of information accessibility. Your narrators are James Wright
and Jenny Seedsman. You can order more copies of this book by visiting the Beyond Blue website, www.beyondblue.org.au. This recording lasts for approximately 7 hours on 6 CDs. For ease of navigation, a new track marks the beginning of each chapter and main headings within chapters. Any headings longer than 15 minutes also have track markers at approximately 5-minute intervals. The contents are as follows. Disclaimer. Additional copies and publishing and copyright details. Track 3 of this CD. Acknowledgements. Track 4. Forward from the South Australian Government. Track 5. Forward by the Honourable Jeff Kennett. Track 6. Introduction. Track 7. Depression. Track 8. Anxiety. Disc 2, Track 2. Disturbing Thoughts. Disc 2, Track 12. Recovery from Trauma. Disc 3, Track 2. Insomnia. Disc 3, Track 5. Conflict. Disc 3, Track 14. Anger. Disc 4, Track 2. Stress. Disc 4, Track 7. Relationship violence. Disc 4, Track 18. Alcohol. Disc 5, Track 2. Substances and mental health. Disc 5, Track 12. Grief. Disc 6, Track 2. Key services and resources. Disc 6, Track 13. Special needs of different population groups. Disc 6, Track 17. Guided progressive muscle relaxation. Disc 6, Track 18. Closing announcement. Disc 6, Track 20. Please note that Discs 2 to 6 contain a more detailed table of contents on Track 1.
Disclaimer, additional copies, and publishing and copyright details. Parts of this book may be copied for personal or professional use. Any other use requires that the usual provisions of copyright, such as permission of the publisher and proper acknowledgement of source, author and publisher, be observed. Please note, the information and self-help resources in this book are not intended as a substitute for mental health assessment, medical or psychiatric consultation, assessment or treatment. Additional copies. You can order more copies of this book by visiting the Beyond Blue website, www.beyondblue.org.au, under Get Information, or by calling the Beyond Blue info line on 1300 22 4636. Publishing and copyright details. Published for Beyond Blue, the National Depression Initiative, by Peacock Publications, 38 Sydenham Road, Norwood, South Australia, 5067. Copyright Mid-North Health, 2004. 11th edition, published March 2010. Reprinted July 2010. National Library of Australia card number and ISBN 978 1 921 601 095. Acknowledgements. The Professional Advisory Reference Group and the Community Advisory Reference Group from the Boolaroo Centre, Orroroo, Peterborough and Jamestown. Beyond Blue and South Australia Country Health wish to thank contributors to the 11th edition, Australian Centre for Post-Traumatic Mental Health and the Australian Drug Foundation. Foreword From the South Australian Government. As Australian rural communities and families endeavour to cope with the impact of the recent debilitating drought, it is very important to have good practical reference material that helps by giving tips on maintaining and protecting their health and well-being. Australians are acknowledged as having great resilience in times of difficulty and uncertainty, but living and working on the land in the face of extended dryness challenges even the most resilient. More recently, for those who've experienced the impact of extensive flooding in Queensland and New South Wales, and the devastating fires in Victoria, the need for helpful information is essential as they face the process of rebuilding their properties and indeed their lives. Although disasters such as flood, fire and drought are an integral part of the Australian way of life, the physical and psychological burden that these cataclysmic events place on those affected is immense. The South Australian Government is working with rural communities to build local capacity and to sustain personal resilience in these challenging times. Providing ways to help people care for their mental well-being is crucial. It is equally important that we also care for our families, neighbours and communities by recognising emerging signs of problems that may require professional support. Early assistance and intervention can help prevent unnecessary distress. Taking care of yourself and your family was written in close consultation with people living and working in rural communities, some of whom can readily identify with the effects that drought or other events can have. The book provides valuable advice and reflects the most current mental health issues that rural services and rural people themselves have identified. The book is one of a range of South Australian Government mental health initiatives which aim to provide people with practical and relevant information and self-help resources. The 11th edition of Taking Care of Yourself and Your Family is an important collaboration between Country Health South Australia and Beyond Blue, the National Depression Initiative. The content and the helpline information have been revised to make it nationally relevant, drawing on Beyond Blue's experience in tackling depression and anxiety across Australia. Taking care of yourself and your family is a valuable resource for the Australian community to maintain good mental health and well-being. It is important to remember that if you don't take care of yourself and your own well-being, it becomes harder to take care of your family and those you cherish. I commend this book to you. Signed, the Honourable John Hill, MP, South Australian Minister for Mental Health and Substance Abuse. Foreword by the Honourable Jeff Kennett. We know Australians are becoming more aware that depression is not a weakness but a condition that needs treatment. We also know that Australian men aren't good at looking after themselves. So I'd like to encourage men to read this book and then, if need be, talk to their doctor about their mental health as well as their physical health. If you broke your arm or gashed your leg, you wouldn't expect that it would get better all by itself. Depression is the same. It won't go away if you ignore it. In fact, it can get worse, and untreated depression can not only be a risk factor for suicide, but can make you susceptible to physical illness as well. Beyond Blue, with the support of funds raised by the Movember Foundation, is making this book, Taking Care of Yourself and Your Family, available free to people throughout Australia. You'll find helpful information and self-care strategies that may assist you to get through the tough times and find the right help. To order additional copies of the book, or for more information on depression, anxiety and related disorders, and where to get help, visit www.beyondblue.org.au or call the Beyond Blue info line 1300 224636 for the cost of a local call. Signed, the Honourable Jeff Kennett, AC, Chairman, Beyond Blue, the National Depression Initiative. Introduction. Initially, this book was compiled for use by people in rural and remote areas of Australia who have little or no useful access to the kinds of counselling and psychotherapy support that people in urban centres can generally take for granted. While the book targets rural and remote Australians, it's also helpful for other people as well. Some people may be unable to access local mental health services due to the location and cost of these services, or due to work commitments and a lack of time. This book provides useful information and practical strategies to help promote good mental health for everyone. Given the vast area of rural Australia and the limited resources of community mental health services, it has proven difficult to focus effectively on measures of preventative mental health, as well as responding to the demands of mental health crises and people with long-standing mental disorders. General medical practitioners are often frustrated in responding to the mental health needs of their patients because they sometimes have little choice but to prescribe medication to control symptoms for which they would prefer to recommend psychological therapy if it were available. Likewise, where a combination of medication and psychological therapy is needed, the former is often all that can be provided. This book is not intended as a substitute for psychological therapy or psychotherapy or formal mental health assessment, but it does aim to provide an additional resource for prevention, early detection, intervention, self-help and education in relation to some common mental health issues and mental disorders. Its design takes account of the known resourcefulness, self-reliance and resilience of many people who live in our often harsh and isolating rural and remote areas. The topics covered in the book were chosen because they've been found to be the most recurrent themes encountered by doctors and other human service providers. The intended uses of the book include a source of basic information about a range of mental health and related issues, a guide for helping others or prompting them to seek assistance in the event of a mental health issue, a resource of strategies and self-help therapies that have been adapted from some widely used and documented standard psychological therapies, a resource that can be photocopied, and self-help therapies that doctors can use as handouts for their patients, a resource for use in basic community mental health education, and a resource for health and human service workers. The content of the book is organised so that readers are not required to read any more information than they need or that interests them. Problem identification checklists are placed at the beginning of relevant sections, so that even if no other part of the section is read, the checklist may be. A number of the self-help resources, such as structured problem-solving, are provided in more than one section, to avoid readers having to refer to another part of the book in addition to the section they're reading. Language, practical examples, and some of the diagrams used in the print edition have been selected in order to be gender-inclusive or user-friendly for men as well as women. It is hoped that the information and resources of this book will not only stimulate interest and concern about mental health issues, but will contribute something to the capacity of Australians to take care of their own and each other's mental health, often despite limited professional services and support. Depression. A depression check. A list of 9 questions follows. Take note of how many you would tick yes to. For more than 2 weeks, have you, question 1, felt sad, down or miserable most of the time? And 2, lost interest or pleasure in most of your usual activities? If you answered yes to either of those questions, complete the following checklist. If you did not answer yes to either of the first 2 questions, it's unlikely that you have a depressive illness. Question 3. Have you lost or gained a lot of weight, or had a decrease or increase in appetite? Question 4. Have you had sleep disturbance? 5. Have you felt slowed down, restless, or excessively busy? Question 6. Have you felt tired or had no energy? Question 7. Have you felt worthless or felt excessively guilty, or felt guilt about things you should not have been feeling guilty about? Question 8. Have you had poor concentration, or had difficulties thinking, or were very indecisive? And question 9. Have you had recurrent thoughts of death? Now add up the number of ticks for your total score. What does your score mean? Assuming you answered yes to questions 1 and or 2, if you ticked yes to 4 or less, you are unlikely to have a depressive illness. If you ticked yes to 5 or more, you are likely to have a depressive illness. If you have some of these symptoms and they're affecting your life, take action. Arrange to speak to a doctor. For more information about depression, visit the Beyond Blue website at www.beyondblue.org.au or call the Beyond Blue info line 1300 22 4636. Thoughts about suicide or self-harm are serious. If you are having these thoughts, take urgent action. Arrange to speak to a doctor or phone a 24-hour mental health emergency line. For a list of national, state and territory crisis lines, as well as national help and information lines, go to Disc 6, Track 14. About depression. Depression is more than just a low mood. It's a serious illness. While we all feel sad, moody, or low from time to time, some people experience these feelings intensely for long periods of time and often without reason. People with depression find it hard to function every day and may be reluctant to participate in activities they once enjoyed. Depression is one of the most common mental health problems. Over 1 million people in Australia experience depression each year. Everyone has a bad day now and then. There's no shortage of life events that can leave us feeling distressed, disappointed, or just plain lousy. The problem is when these kinds of feelings persist. When long-lasting changes in mood, feelings and behaviours develop into depression. And yet, on occasions, depression just seems to come out of nowhere at a time when everything appears to be fine. Many factors may contribute to depression, including a family history of depression, hormonal changes in women and men, emotional stress, for example, bereavement, job loss, relationship breakdown, medicines, e.g. some cancer and heart medicines, medical conditions such as thyroid and other hormone problems, or battling a chronic or terminal illness. Personality, the type of person you are and how you respond to life events. Social support, whether you have sufficient supportive people around you. People isolated on farms or station properties may lack important social support. And life changes. Major life events, such as the birth of a baby, may increase the risk of developing depression. What if depression is left untreated? Getting the right treatment early is crucial to a person's recovery from depression. Left untreated, an episode of major depression may last from 6 to 12 months or longer. Half the people who recover from an untreated episode of depression will slip back into their former state of depression within 2 years of their first episode. Depression is a serious disorder. Even minor depression can become very disruptive to people's lives, more so than many physical disorders. However, when depression is properly treated, most people can expect a full recovery. What are the treatments for depression? Different types of depression require different types of treatment. This may include physical exercise for preventing and treating mild depression, through to psychological and drug treatments for more severe levels of depression. The major types of treatment for depression include psychological treatments, antidepressant medication, and self-help strategies. For more information on treatments, see Beyond Blue Fact Sheets numbers 4, 10, 11 and 24, and A Guide to What Works for Depression, a comprehensive review of all known treatments for depression, including medical, psychological, complementary and lifestyle, available at www.beyondblue.org.au or by calling the Beyond Blue info line 1300 22 4636. Important. Self-help measures are no substitute for medication if medication is needed. Thoughts about self-harm or suicide are serious. Speak to a doctor or call a 24-hour mental health crisis line immediately. Psychological treatments. Psychological treatments deal with problems that particularly affect people with depression. These treatments help people to change negative patterns of thinking and/or sort out relationship difficulties. Psychological treatments can help to change negative thoughts and feelings, encourage the person to get involved in activities, speed the person's recovery, prevent depression from recurring, and identify ways to manage the illness and stay well. Psychological treatments include cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, which is one of the most researched psychological therapies and has a lot of evidence to support its effectiveness in treating people for depression and anxiety disorders. It teaches people to think realistically about common difficulties, helping them to change their thought patterns and the way they react to certain situations. Behavioral therapy approaches have been shown to be very helpful for many anxiety disorders. Interpersonal therapy, IPT, is another psychological treatment which has been researched and found to be effective for treatment of depression. It helps people find new ways to get along with others and to resolve losses, changes, and conflict in relationships. Psychological treatments can be provided by GPs, psychologists, social workers, occupational therapists in mental health, and psychiatrists. In some regions, particularly in rural and remote Australia, this type of therapy is not always available. Online options, such as Mood Gym. That's at www.moodgym.anu.edu.au, are good alternatives if people aren't able to access a mental health professional. The self-help strategies provided in this chapter are based on psychological treatments. If a person is only mildly or moderately depressed, psychological treatment alone may be effective. However, if depression is severe or persists, medication may also be needed. Medicare rebates. In Australia, people can access psychological treatments through Medicare when a GP, psychiatrist or paediatrician refers a person for treatment. For more details, contact Beyond Blue or ask your general practitioner about this. If you don't have a GP, Beyond Blue also has a list of health professionals with expertise in treating depression and anxiety. To find out more, visit the Beyond Blue website, www.beyondblue.org.au, and click on Find a Doctor or Other Mental Health Practitioner, or call the Beyond Blue info line on 1300 22 4636. Antidepressant medication. There is a great deal of misinformation about antidepressant medication. Antidepressant medications are not addictive, do not change your personality, and do not make people more dangerous. Antidepressant medication can play a role when people become severely depressed or when other treatments are ineffective in the treatment of depression. Deciding which antidepressants are best for a person can be complex. There is a range of factors that should be discussed with a doctor before starting antidepressants. It's important that any current medication or over-the-counter medications, including herbal or natural remedies, are reviewed by a medical practitioner before a person starts taking antidepressants. Antidepressant medication can take 14 to 21 days before beginning to work effectively. The prescribing health professional should discuss differences in effects and possible side effects of medications. Stopping medication should only be done gradually on a doctor's recommendation and under supervision. Most people taking medication will also benefit from psychological therapies, which will reduce the likelihood of relapse after the person has stopped taking the medication. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, Australia's regulatory agency for medical drugs, and manufacturers of antidepressants do not recommend antidepressant use for treating depression in young people under the age of 18. For more information, see the Beyond Blue Fact Sheet number 11, Antidepressant Medication. Self-help strategies. Any doctor can prescribe antidepressant medication. However, it's important that people try to help themselves to recover and work towards preventing a relapse, with or without medication. Self-help includes managing thoughts and self-talk, structured problem-solving, activity planning and exercise, reducing alcohol consumption to a moderate level, managing stress, and restoring a pattern of normal sleep. The activities in the following pages provide a range of different self-help strategies for managing depression. What can I do to help someone who is depressed? People who are depressed are not always easy to help because often they are disinterested, lack energy and motivation, can be irritable, and may not see the point of doing anything. Some people are not used to talking much, especially about themselves, so even getting a conversation going can be difficult. For more information, see A Guide to What Works for Depression at www.beyondblue.org.au or call the Beyond Blue info line 1300 224636. Useful tips for helping someone who may be depressed. Think about the best way to approach the person, given what you know about his or her personality and temperament. Discreetly let the person know you've noticed a change in his or her behaviour. Indicate that you are seriously concerned. Talk openly about depression and suggest the person visits a doctor or speaks to a health professional recommended by a doctor. If appropriate, help the person to make the appointment. Perhaps consider going with him or her and follow up after the appointment. If you think the person won't listen to you, consider who does this person usually confide in, feel comfortable with, and/or trust. Maybe that person could make the approach and encourage him or her to seek assistance. Provide the person with information about depression. Give him or her a copy of this book or this section on depression, or refer the person to www.beyondblue.org.au. Try to find ways of reducing the person's isolation. Make an extra effort to stay in touch, preferably in person. Encourage other close friends and family to do the same. Encourage the person to exercise, eat well, and become involved in social activities. It is unhelpful to pressure people with depression to snap out of it, get their act together, or cheer up. To stay away and avoid them, to tell them they just need to stay busy or get out more, to pressure them to party more, or to wipe out how they're feeling with drugs or alcohol, or assume the problem will just go away. Thoughts about self-harm or suicide are serious, Be as determined and resourceful as you can in finding a way to get a person having these thoughts to speak to a doctor or appropriate health professional. How to talk to someone about depression. It's not always easy to know how to help someone who may be experiencing depression. It can be hard to know what to say or do. Here are some tips. Talk to the person about how he or she is feeling. Listen to what the person is saying. Sometimes when people want to talk, they're not always seeking advice, but just need to talk about their concerns. Make it clear the person has your full attention and you're listening properly. You may like to save any suggestions for a later discussion. Maintain eye contact and sit in a relaxed position. Positive body language will help you both feel more comfortable. Use open-ended questions such as, "So, tell me about," which require more than a yes or no answer. This is often a good way of starting a conversation. If your conversation becomes difficult, or the person you're talking to gets angry, stay calm, be firm, fair and consistent, admit if you are wrong, and don't lose control. Often, just spending time with the person lets him or her know you care and can help you understand what he or she is going through. Encourage the person to seek professional help from the family doctor or a mental health worker. Take care of yourself. Supporting someone with depression can be demanding, so make sure you take some time out to look after yourself. Remember, go out of your way and don't give up on them. Just being with them, being present, even without much talking, can be very supportive and helpful. Managing thoughts and self-talk. When people become depressed, they often think negatively about themselves. What have I ever achieved? I'm no good at anything. Their circumstances. There's no way out of this mess. It's all pointless. Everything I've tried has just made things worse. And the future. Things will never really change. They'll only get harder. How we think and what we say to ourselves in our head, self-talk, can have a profound effect on our mood and mental state. It can also cause paralysis in problem-solving and decision-making. At this point in the print version of the book, there is a diagram showing a continuous cycle with 4 recurring stages. The first stage is depression, which leads to negative thoughts and self-talk, which leads to more depression, which leads to paralysis in problem-solving and decision-making, which leads back to depression. And the cycle continues in this way. Becoming aware of our thoughts and self-talk, and learning the skill and habit of managing them, is essential to recovery from depression and, later on, preventing relapse. There are basically 2 kinds of thought patterns we can use in responding to the things life deals out to us. One that is self-defeating, because it launches into negative thoughts and self-talk, and one that is constructive and helpful, because it launches into sensible and rational thoughts and self-talk. Here are a couple of examples. First, a self-defeating pattern for a situation such as an argument with a wife. This situation will lead to self-defeating thoughts and self-talk, such as, "I can't even get on with my wife anymore. Even my marriage is a failure. I'm useless at this, like everything else." This will lead to mental health consequences, such as worsened depression and feeling angry and powerless. Physical consequences, feeling sick, a knot in the stomach, feeling very tense and shaky. And behavioural consequences, you will give up and withdraw, perhaps even get angry and make things worse. Now here's an example of a constructive pattern in the situation of an argument with the wife. The situation will lead you to constructive thoughts and self-talk. For example, I don't feel good about this, but we're both tense and on edge. Our relationship is okay. We'll need to work this through when we're both calm. And this will have mental health consequences of feeling regretful but okay because things are in perspective. And physical consequences such as feeling a bit wound up but becoming calm. And behavioural consequences such as I will seek to resolve problems and relationships. People who tend to use a self-defeating thought pattern in interpreting events also develop, mostly unconsciously, errors in thinking, which, like jumping to conclusions, may seem to save time and energy, but can actually have consequences that demand much time and energy. Managing thoughts and self-talk and adopting constructive thought patterns are essential for achieving and maintaining good mental health. It can be achieved through becoming aware of how we respond to events and what we think and say to ourselves in our heads, censoring and modifying our thoughts, especially those that are automatic, and self-talk, and challenging and dismantling errors in thinking. Becoming aware. We can simply decide to become aware of our thoughts and self-talk. This awareness provides us with the opportunity to change them. It gives us the power of censorship. With practice, it's even possible to exert influence over our automatic thoughts. Challenging and dismantling errors in thinking will help this too. To get this awareness underway, it's helpful to do some initial documenting of situations or events to be examined, the feelings experienced, and the thoughts that occur. This is also a good way to identify errors in thinking. Practice taking snapshots of situations and write things down. There's an example in the print edition with a table with 3 columns. The first column gives the situation or event. The second column gives the feelings experienced. And the third column gives automatic thoughts and self-talk in the situation. For example, the situation is an unexpected bill arrives that throws my budget out. Feelings experienced could be sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, fear about how to cope with another bill. And automatic thoughts and self-talk could be everything just has to go wrong. Like everything else around this place. There's no way we can cope with this. Writing things down like this can be quite revealing and is a useful way of establishing awareness. After a while, this can be expanded into the skill of censoring and modifying thoughts and self-talk. Censoring and modifying. The key to censoring and modifying or managing thoughts and self-talk is the speed with which we intervene and ask ourselves, is this thought or idea, or what I've begun saying to myself, self-defeating or constructive? If it's self-defeating, how can I immediately modify it or replace it so that I'm using a constructive thought pattern? This is a skill to be practiced and a new habit to be formed. As with becoming aware, it can be really helpful, at least initially, to write things down. When we can see our thoughts and what we're saying to ourselves, we have more power to change them. Make a table with 4 columns. The left-hand column gives the situation or event. The second column gives your thoughts and self-talk. The third column asks, are these self-defeating or constructive? And the fourth column asks, if self-defeating, what would be constructive. Here's an example. The situation or event is a friend who you'd arranged to come over and help you with something important has left a message to cancel. Your thoughts and self-talk might be, "Why is it me that gets let down? This is typical of the way things go for me. One of these days, something might just go right." Now ask yourself in the third column, are these self-defeating or constructive? They're self-defeating because I have reacted negatively and feel more flat and depressed than before. Now, if these thoughts are self-defeating, what would be constructive? Considering, how do I know why he had to cancel? It could have been an emergency. I've cancelled things too. There are other things I can do. This can be put on hold. Everyone feels let down sometimes. That's life. Challenging and dismantling errors in thinking. Errors in thinking consist of certain assumptions and ways of thinking that keep recurring, are habitual, and allow us to save time by not thinking constructively about events. They provide an easy response, but one that is neither time-saving nor helpful. Errors in thinking save a penny and spend a pound, because their consequences heavily tax our energy reserves and contribute to depression. Errors in thinking need to be challenged and revised if we're to establish a constructive and healthy thought pattern. Some common errors in thinking. Mind reading. She thinks I'm a failure. They think I'm not as good as so-and-so. Catastrophizing. Everything always turns out bad for me. Things are always against me. Now I'll never be able to, whatever. No matter how hard I try, everything always goes wrong. Labelling. I'm an idiot. I'm a failure. I'm a lousy whatever. Instead of, I did poorly, or I did not achieve so-and-so, or I needed to whatever. Overgeneralizing. Saying always, never, no one, or everyone. Fortune-telling. Everyone is sure to so-and-so. I'm sure to mess it up. It's going to be a disaster. I'm sure to feel dreadful when I do whatever. Rule saying should, must, have to, setting sometimes unrealistic expectations. Black and white thinking. Everything she does, she gets right. I've completely ruined everything. He succeeds at everything. I never get it right. Note down any examples you can think of. Structured problem solving. It's common for people who are depressed to feel stressed and overwhelmed by problems. Adopting a new way of tackling problems can be very helpful. Structured problem solving is a method designed to help you feel in control of your problems and to enable you to deal more effectively with future problems. The key elements of this method include identifying and pinning down the problems that have contributed to you feeling overwhelmed, thinking clearly and constructively about problems, taking stock of how you've coped in the past, your personal strength and the support and resources available to you, and providing a sound basis for important decision-making. With this method, you can work on a single problem or follow the process to tackle a number of problems. Usually, though, it's best to deal with one problem that is specific and potentially solvable, especially to begin with. Structured problem solving involves 6 steps. Step 1. Write down the problem causing you worry or distress. Step 2. Think about your options for dealing with this problem. Try to think broadly. Include good and not so good options. Write them down. Step 3. Write down the advantages and disadvantages of each option. Step 4. Identify the best option or options to deal with the problem. Step 5. List the steps needed to carry out each option. Bear in mind the resources needed and pitfalls to overcome. Step 6. Review your progress in carrying out your option or options. Ask yourself, what have I achieved? What still needs to be done? For more information, see Fact Sheet number 10, Changing Your Thinking, at www.beyondblue.org.au. Activity planning. Many people who have depression experience a loss of energy, motivation, interest, and pleasure in things previously meaningful or enjoyed. As a result, they become less physically, mentally, and socially active, which tends to worsen the depression. Becoming active again is an important step in breaking the cycle of depression. This is given in a 3-stage diagram in the print edition. Depression leads to loss of energy, motivation, interest, and pleasure in things, which leads to decreased physical, mental, and social activity, which leads to more depression. Activity planning aims to break the cycle of depression by methodically and gradually restoring important daily activities. Achievement activities. Daily activities, even if only small, can help restore the lost experience of meaning and satisfaction. They can also reverse the sense of paralysis that is so common with depression. List the activities that previously gave you a sense of achievement, and number them in order of importance. Now list work tasks that need to be done, which will give you a sense of achievement or relief to complete, and number them in order of importance. Social activities. People who are depressed commonly withdraw from family, friends, and important social activities. Social isolation, which can quickly set in, only serves to worsen depression and make recovery more difficult. Doing things with other people, even if it doesn't feel comfortable at first, and even if you have to drive a long distance, can help motivate you, lift your mood, and improve your general state of mind. It is important to decide to accept social invitations and to pursue opportunities for social contact and activities. List the social contact and activities that used to be important to you, and number them in order of importance. List the family and friends you need to reconnect with or spend more time with, and number them in order of importance. Pleasant activities. People who are depressed often lose interest and pleasure in things they once liked doing. It is vital to recovery from depression to plan activities that can again be a source of enjoyment, pleasure, and satisfaction. List activities that you would normally find enjoyable, interesting, relaxing, or satisfying, and number them in order of importance. Physical activities. Regular daily exercise can be a powerful antidote for depression. Ideally, this should be done early in the day and in the sunlight. Certainly, manual work provides exercise, but the best kind of physical activity for depression is separate from work and purely dedicated to improving physical and mental health. Walking, cycling, using weights or an exercise machine, for example, even if only for 15 minutes a day, can be quite beneficial. Bearing in mind any medical condition or physical limitations you might have, list the physical or exercise activities you've done in the past. Now select one of these to recommence. Now that you've listed and prioritised all the activities that are important for your recovery from depression, achievement, social, pleasant and physical activities, put your number 1 selections into your diary or the daily activities diary provided in the print edition. Tips for successful activities planning. Whenever possible, put one of each of these activities into your diary each day. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Better to achieve small goals than to feel a failure because of attempting too much. If you start an activity or task and run out of steam, or for some other reason can't commence it or complete it, that's fine. Simply reschedule it for the next day or another suitable time. Try to be sure you have the day's activity plan completed the evening before or in advance, so that you have a plan of action to follow immediately when you get up. Reducing alcohol consumption to a moderate level. Many people drown their sorrows and try to escape problems and feelings of depression through the use of alcohol. The problem is that any relief alcohol does provide is short-lived. Alcohol is actually a depressant drug. It spoils the quality of sleep and interferes with the effects of antidepressant medication. Strategies for moderating drinking. Try to avoid drinking at home alone, especially when you're feeling down or anxious. Try limiting your drinking to the evening mealtime. Drink low-alcohol beers and mixers. Drink slowly. Limit yourself to 2 standard drinks each day. Think ahead and creatively about how to avoid drinking excessively in situations, like the pub or social gatherings, where there is pressure to do so. Use your daily activity diary to plan 2 alcohol-free days each week. Try to choose days when it is easiest to do so, like when an activity is planned for the evening that can be a useful distraction. Decide beforehand how much alcohol you will permit yourself to drink. Measure it out, and only allow yourself that amount. Always try to stay within the Australian alcohol guidelines. For men and women, over a lifetime, if you drink no more than 2 standard drinks a day, you reduce the lifetime risk of harming yourself from alcohol-related disease or injury. On a single occasion, having no more than 4 standard drinks reduces the risk of alcohol-related injury arising from that occasion. To find out how many standard drinks there are in beer, wine and spirits, go to Disc 5, Track 5 in the chapter on alcohol, or visit www.alcohol.gov.au. For people who regularly drink 2 standard drinks per day, the lifetime risk of death from an alcohol-related disease is about 0.4 in 100 people with that drinking pattern. Above that level, the risk increases with the number of drinks per day, and is above 1 in 100 at 3 drinks per day. The risk increases more sharply for women than for men, as is indicated by a bar graph in the print edition, which shows that for men drinking 10 standard drinks per day, the chances of death from alcohol-related disease are 6 in 100, but for women, they are nearly 10 in 100. The source for these figures is the National Health and Medical Research Council Australian Guidelines to Reduce Health Risks from Drinking Alcohol, published Canberra, Commonwealth of Australia, 2009. For more information, see Fact Sheet 9, Reducing Alcohol and Other Drugs, at www.beyondblue.org.au. Managing stress. Emotional stress and acute distress have been identified as significant contributing factors to depression. However, trying to create a stress-free life would be both unrealistic and undesirable, since stress is associated with work, family, and personal relationships. In fact, with nearly all the changes and challenges that enable us to develop, adapt, and make our way successfully through life. The problem arises when we experience too much stress, particularly at one time. For people who are depressed, too many sources of stress, or stressors, can worsen and prolong their depression. Consequently, finding ways of reducing and managing stress may be very important. Ways of reducing stress. Postponing major life changes. Some major life changes may be unavoidable, but it is best to postpone changes that are likely to generate stress and upheaval if possible. Learning to relax. Think of the things that help you relax, and set aside time in the day to do more of them. Also, be sure to get enough rest and sleep each day. Regular daily exercise. Find a form of gentle exercise, apart from work, that you can enjoy and keep doing on a regular basis. Learn to say no and set priorities. You may need to say no more often to new commitments, and instead concentrate on your activities plan. Work on your relationship. One of the most common contributors to long-term depression is tension and conflict in personal relationships. You may need to devote more time to greasing the gears and resolving issues in your relationships. If you have access to a skilled counsellor, that could help a lot. If not, there are useful self-help books available in bookstores and libraries, and information on the Internet. Use financial advisory services or rural counselling. Financial difficulties can be hugely stressful and are one of the leading causes of relationship breakdown. Using the expertise and more objective view of a financial advisor or rural counsellor can make a very real difference to how people view and tackle financial hardship or pressure. Even when there appear to be no easy solutions, getting things into perspective, being clear about options, and getting a chance, perhaps for the first time, to speak about how difficult things are, can significantly reduce feelings of powerlessness and stress. Use the other self-help ideas in this book. See the chapter on stress. For more information, see Fact Sheet 6, Reducing Stress, at www.beyondblue.org.au. Restoring a normal pattern of sleep. Sleep disturbance is common with depression, and frequently takes the form of early morning wakening, usually around 3 a.m., with difficulty returning to sleep. To restore a normal pattern of sleep, it's important to practice sleep-promoting behaviour during the day, in the evening, at bedtime, and during the night. Better sleep guidelines. During the day, organise your day. Regular times for eating meals, taking medicines, performing chores and other activities help keep our inner clocks running smoothly. Regular exercise during the day or early evening can improve sleeping patterns. Set aside time for problem-solving and decision-making during the day to avoid worry or anxiety at night. See the subheading Structured Problem-Solving earlier in this chapter. Avoid napping during the day. Go to bed and get up at regular times. During the evening, put the day to rest. If you still have things on your mind, write them down or put them in your daily activities diary to be dealt with tomorrow. Light exercise early in the evening may help sleep. Avoid exercise late in the evening, as this may make getting to sleep more difficult. Get into a routine of winding down during the course of the evening, allowing at least half an hour of quiet activities such as reading or listening to music prior to bedtime. Avoid drinking caffeinated drinks after about 4 p.m. and don't drink more than 2 cups of caffeinated drinks each day, especially coffee, tea, cocoa and cola. Avoid smoking for at least an hour, preferably an hour and a half, before going to bed. Don't use alcohol to make you sleep, and keep your intake moderate. Limit yourself to 2 standard drinks each day. Have 1 or 2 alcohol-free days each week. Make sure your bed and bedroom are comfortable, not too cold or too warm. Ensure that your bedroom is dark and that the morning light does not filter in. However, if you have a tendency to oversleep, it may be helpful to let the morning light into the room. Avoid a heavy meal close to bedtime. If you are hungry, a light snack may help you get to sleep. At bedtime, try to do the same things before you go to bed each night. Develop a calming bedtime routine, such as having a warm bath or shower, listening to relaxation music, or using a relaxation technique. This way, your body will learn to know that, with these activities, you are getting ready to go to sleep. Go to bed when you feel sleepy tired, and not before. Don't watch TV or have conversations or arguments in bed. Keep your bed and bedroom only for sleep and sexual activity. Turn the light off when you get into bed. Relax and tell yourself that sleep will come when it is ready. Enjoy relaxing your mind and body, even if you don't fall asleep at first. During the night, if you wake up too early in the night, don't lie awake for more than 30 minutes. Instead of just being awake or worrying, get out of bed and do something that is distracting yet relaxing. Return to bed only when you feel sleepy again. Get up at the same time each morning. Don't sleep late in the morning trying to make up for lost sleep. If you live in a place or area where there are sounds or noises that might wake you from sleep, use earplugs to block out the noise. Avoid sleeping pills. They do not provide a long-term solution to sleep problems. For more information, see Fact Sheet 7, Sleeping Well, at www.beyondblue.org.au.
This is the end of Disc 1. The recording continues on Disc 2.